And I always have this question inside. Am I being of service or disservice by trying to explain these things? Now, the reality is that today we are so busy and overwhelmed that few of us have time to wrestle with the book, with the text. And we don't know that wrestling is developing our spiritual mind. And therefore, few people can really study the secret doctrine. So my hope is that this book will give the necessary intellectual understanding of the text, so that then you are confident to do the real work with the secret doctrine. That is, there are many statements that no matter how much you explain them, they are not exhaustive. You have to work with it, and then insights come to you as you work with these texts. So my hope is that the book just gives you some confidence for you to take on the secret doctrine and work in this way. So we are going to see, let me see let me see the different topics. Or do you have the program? Because I don't want to blank. Yeah, so let me, with this, I'm going to finish and then we can do question and answers. So Blavatsky said, in order for the study of the secret doctrine to be this kind of form of yoga, she called it, this is what in the East they call jnana yoga. Jnana is a Sanskrit word that means wisdom, knowledge. So she said, if you study the secret doctrine in this way, trying to use the secret doctrine not as a source of information, but as a source of meditation, then you become a jnana yogi. And she says there are 4 ideas that you have to keep in mind as you study the secret doctrine, so that these ideas are trying to help you not fall in the natural tendency of interpreting the secret doctrine with the lower mind, that is in a materialistic way. So one, she says, is that everything is one. And she says something striking. She says, if you lose the idea of oneness as you study the secret doctrine, the study loses its value. That's a radical statement. Why does it lose the value? I can study and remember everything in the secret doctrine without thinking much about oneness, and I can give lectures and write books. How is the value of the study lost if I lose sight of oneness? Well, because she was talking about this spiritual transformation that the secret doctrine is intended to produce. So as we look at everything, when there is a description, and we will see that this weekend, when there is a description of the absolute reality, you are the absolute reality. When there is a description of the celestial beings, you are part of the essence of the celestial beings. When there is a description of cycles, of this, it's all about you, as it is also all about the cosmos. You and the cosmos are not separate, are not different. The secret doctrine is about the manifestation of the solar system as much as it is a manifestation of your own mind. And everything that, all the processes, all the forces, all the planes, these are all things that happen within the one being, which is you. Not you as a body. Obviously, you as the body, or me as the body, is not the one being. This body here is very limited. But our true essence is the one being, which means I'm not this body. If anything, I'm this body, that body, that body, all the bodies are mine, yours. Because we are all one, but the problem is that we are the one self identified with this little body, and the one self identified with that little body, and then we think we are all different, like the hand. Each finger has its own sensation. I touch these 2 fingers, and then if I put my attention here, the thumb seems to be external. If I place my attention to the thumb, then the index is external to me. So the one self, which is what you really are, is paying attention to the different bodies, but forgetting the true nature of that one being. And all mystics realize this.
When you say we and I, no, I was gonna say, when you say we and I first heard you say that, I thought me, Michelle, and oneness. And so I think it helps my brain to clarify that I'm not talking about, you're not talking about Michelle or Papa.
Yeah, that's why I say not you as the little body. But that's the thing. Who do you think you are? And this is what the secret doctrine challenges. Do you think you are Michelle or Pablo? Well, you are mistaken. Pablo is the name that was given to this body, with this brain, that went through certain experiences and has a certain memory. And I existed before Pablo, and I will continue to exist after Pablo. Who is that I that continues to exist? We can say, okay, the soul. Well, that's a big step. Can you perceive yourself as being the soul that is beyond all the bodies, all the experiences? And then if you push back, the soul itself is just the way of the one being. And the soul also comes and goes, and you remain. You were there at the beginning, and you will be there after the end, because we are eternal. So this is what the secret doctrine is trying to help you look at. And this doesn't work if you are just trying to accumulate concepts. You have to work with the secret doctrine. So that's the first idea. The second idea is that everything is alive, and it has its own consciousness. So when I say I want to eat chocolate, who is that I? What do I mean by I? It is the brain, say the cells of my brain that are sending this signal that, or the cells in my stomach, or a parasite in my gut that are sending this hormone, and the brain says, I want to eat chocolate. Because every single cell in my cell is alive and has its own consciousness. What I call Pablo is this collectivity of different consciousnesses that they are neighbors, and they just form this neighborhood. And sometimes, when the parasite is saying, hey, I need food, I want to eat chocolate, then I say, oh, I have a taste for chocolate. It's just a parasite. Or the same with anything, the cells of the liver, the cells of, whatever. So the second idea is that everything is alive, everything is conscious, and that whenever we are talking about the manifestation of something, we are talking about a host of different, she calls them monads, units of consciousness, evolving one on top of the other, just like the planet. The planet is a being, and within this being, we are all evolving, and the animals, and the vegetable and mineral kingdom beyond. So how do things look when you keep that idea in mind? Then there is another idea that whatever happens in heaven, the same kind of patterns are repeated on earth. As above, so below, for example. We will see this has enormous applications. And then that the human being is a small reflection of the cosmos as a whole. That's when I was telling you, everything that is described in the secret doctrine about the cosmos is a description about yourself, adapted to yourself, because you are a microcosm. So you can see in the book or in the Bowen notes, there are these four ideas, and if you study the secret doctrine keeping these things in mind, what you get from the secret doctrine will be completely. So this weekend we are going to explore the secret doctrine in that way, just to give you a taste of it and stimulate you to continue with this in your own study. Any comments or questions? Yes.
I have a question. You talked earlier that you can use this book, right, as a catalyst, right? To awaken or maybe to activate the
Mhm.
Can you speak about your own experience, maybe an insight based on something that you have?
Mhm. So my own experience about this theme of activating or catalyzing the awakening of the higher mind. Well, something that I noticed is just how my approach to the study changed. In the sense that when I joined the society, I was in college. I had a very intellectual approach to theosophy because that's how I was studying in college. And I said, okay, I'm studying microbiology was my degree. This is tough stuff. I certainly can study the secret doctrine. I soon disabused myself of that notion. But at the beginning, the lower mind, one characteristic of the lower mind is that it labels, separates, contrasts. So for some years, my approach to theosophy was like that. And I saw a lot of this is not that. This is different from this. This is in contradiction to that. And it was just a question of, evidently this concept is different from this one. And then as time passed, I began to be able to see, the patterns behind in a certain way. And I'm not talking about anything extraordinary. This happens to everybody. I really don't like to talk about my experience, but I understand that, it can help kind of visualize things. But you start seeing, when you read something, you start seeing the depth behind. And when you go to the depth behind, you see that things are really connected and things that seem contradictory, different, they are really different aspects of the same thing. So while at the beginning, the study generated this sense of, in a certain sense, subtler, but intolerance or no, this is not, this is not, this is it. And then as time passes, you start having this more integrated, it's even a different feeling about the study where, where the sharpness of the lower mind is reduced. So I think a person that is studying in the higher mind can never be dogmatic. I mean, you can still say, I think this is true and this is not, because that's, it's not that we say, everything is right. But there is a sense, a deeper sense, that all perceptions are limited. And there is this willingness to say, okay, this is how I perceive it. But you would never try to, impose it and say, you are wrong because this is, this is the way that things are. That is not the way. Even though you still prefer these approaches or that, it's a different attitude. Sometimes you see some theosophies that are just arguing and fighting, but I don't see how that can be done if the study is stimulating your higher mind. Yes.
I have a question. Could you distinguish the difference between oneness versus holistic? Because to me, oneness means something, and that something is limited to a certain extent. I can say one body, one human being. I can say one community. I can say one word, one solar system, one universe, or whatever it happened to be, but that's still limited. Mm-hmm. So is she reflecting in terms of the holistic aspect of it, or is it just that oneness aspect of it? Because to me, oneness is still limited.
Yeah. Well, you have sometimes in Hinduism, for example, to try to address that problem, you have the idea the one without a second. Meaning, when you talk about the one, you are not talking about one and then the second and then the third. You are talking about the one, which is the only thing that exists. The way that Blavatsky used this is by using the phrase one all. She says the one all this or the one all that. So in many places of the secret doctrine, she uses that particular phrase, which means the totality of existence. not the one existence as opposed to the other existence. Now, something that is important, very important in this study, is to realize that words are always limited. You can make, your best effort to produce the best kind of words and phrasing, etc., and it will always fall short. So what we need to learn, and this is what happens as we can access the higher mind, is to see the word, to see the meaning behind the word, and not to be too bothered by the word. I mean, again, you still can say, as you say, I don't think just saying one is the best, because it can give the wrong idea, 1, 2, 3. So you may choose to mean saying the whole or the wholeness is better. That's perfectly fine. But the word doesn't block your understanding of what is behind. So many times in our groups, we hear people reacting to the words that an author is using. And, words are inefficient. Words are limiting. And, words have different images and background and baggage in each one of us. So when we read a text, if you are stuck in the word, then you are stuck in the lower mind. If you zoom out and hear the words, and even if you say, I would say differently, but what is this sentence pointing to? Then words begin to be less and less, of a problem. Again, if you're a writer, you still want to try to write in the best possible way. So one thing doesn't deny the other, but in your own perception, you understand, okay, words, whatever word you use is going to be a problem. And maybe you don't see a problem with that word, but somebody else will see it. So yes, in general, she would use the one all, not always, but then once you know that, you understand when she says the one, then you understand that she means the one all. Depending on the context. In the book, I explain that the secret doctrine is very contextual. You have to see in what context Blavatsky is saying something. And then, sometimes she says the demiurge is the divine mind that has the plan of the cosmos. And then you turn one more page, and she says, and the demiurge is this limited god of the Gnostics. That you say, wait, I thought you were saying that demiurge was this great thing. Well, that's the beauty of the secret doctrine. And when you learn how to deal with that, then there is this different way of thinking. Then you understand she's talking about principles on different planes. There is a demiurge on each plane. There is the demiurge in us. And when you are talking about that function that is the demiurge on the highest planes, this is the divine mind. When you talk about that function that she calls demiurge on the physical plane, it is a limited creative power. So the secret doctrine forces you again to think of things in the universal way, in the abstract way, rather than the scientific way that one word for one thing. That was hard for me. I come from the scientific background. So to me, you use a word, and that word means one thing. But even though that language is great for science, it's very poor for metaphysical teaching. You need a more fluid language that Blavatsky uses, and that stimulates the higher mind. What else? Yes.
You mentioned earlier question.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is, first, I understand or see that all of this is to find the question, which leads you to whatever it leads you to. But it's not the answer. The answer is cheap and easy. Think about all they want. About questions. So I'd like for you to elaborate a little bit your thoughts about this.
Yes, some philosophers say if you ask the right question, then you have access to the truth. formulating the right question is not easy. Because many times the way we frame the question reveals our basic misunderstanding of something. So I think that's what the secret doctrine helps us with, because many times we keep asking the wrong questions, like, how come? So the demiurge is this or that? Because we are thinking in a way that is not the way of the higher mind. But that's why when we study the secret doctrine, if you go to it with that mind that says, I need to get a clear picture from this, you will be constantly frustrated. I say in the book, go to the secret doctrine as when you go to solve a puzzle or a mystery. Go with that sense of discovery, of exploration. Let's see what insight can I get now. Not with the sense of, I'm going to read this page and I need to understand everything that is said there. So in the secret doctrine, we keep asking questions. And as long as our questions are wrongly formulated, we just keep, hitting the wall until at some point comes the insight. You say, oh, I see it, I get it. This is the problem, or this is it. So even if it is the wrong question, I think all questions are knocking at the door of a higher perception if we continue earnestly. Because we are what we are, and we start with our limitations. So if we continue to work with the questions get refined, and the questions open the door for something else. So don't be afraid in the secret doctrine to ask the questions and to contemplate it. And maybe the insight will come the next minute or maybe in 10 years. That's very common. 10 years later you say, oh, now I get it, what she was saying there, or in any text that has that kind of depth. Don't be quick to fill the question with an answer. Be comfortable with unanswered questions.
But isn't that part of the process? Don't restrict your answers. Because that may lead you to another question.
Yes, absolutely. You work with a question, but be comfortable, because sometimes there is a question, and the mind is an answering machine. So you ask a question, the mind will answer. It doesn't matter if the mind knows what it's talking about, if there is enough information, the mind will answer. And then you examine that question, and don't be too ready to say, okay, makes sense, let's move on, because you feel good, you feel safe, okay, I know the answer. When there is a question and you don't have the answer, it is difficult, it is tough. Your mind says, wait a second, I need to solve this. I can't go on with this void here. Work with that void. That void is created, and it may be frustrating to the lower mind, but it's created.
You mentioned HPB in her intergroup teaching used to require of her students, the 12 intergroup students that she had with her, every meeting they had to formulate 3 questions and then come back with 3 more questions. And nothing about the answers, but she wanted their minds to think in this questioning, leaving the void, the discomfort without the answer.
Yeah, and also HPB, she formed during her time an esoteric section for those people who wanted to go deeper into the teaching. And she said, nobody should send me a question before that person has exhausted his or her own resources to answer the question themselves. Because that's where you develop. If you just ask me the question, she would say, you'll get an answer, and what's the value of that? So first work on this. After you did everything, well, you can send the question, because the answer may give you a hint as to in what direction your thinking may go. But first, make your effort. Yes, first here.
How much, it's hard to ask that question, simple though. How much knowledge or what kind of background do you really need to even start studying
Yes, the secret
Secret
doctrine.
doctrine. You may laugh at me, but I'm a third generation philosopher. I was in high school. My father gave me a present after I graduated. So that here's a set of secret doctrine, but do not read them unless you're ready. That's all he told me. He never told me anything else. And I'm still.
So one day if you are really,
I haven't.
if you are-
I'm scared to open.
I know. Well, if you don't understand the words, it's impossible or next to impossible to reflect on them, meditate on them, to have an insight. If you see a string of words and you don't know what they mean, that is the first step. You need to know what the words mean in order to start working with the concept. So a certain background is necessary. And unfortunately, the secret of, the background that you would need to understand even intellectually most of the secret doctrine, you need a knowledge of Greek philosophy, Hindu philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, Kabbalah, etc., etc. When you open the secret doctrine.
Okay, goodbye.
But
That's the hard part.
I know, but when you approach the secret doctrine in the way that Blavatsky is proposing here, all that becomes secondary. Because what you go to the secret doctrine, not to understand everything that is there. You go and work with, you go through the page and you read and you try to understand, and then every now and then there is this sentence that produces something in you. And then you work with that sentence. You may have read the whole stanza, several pages, but there is a sentence that is challenging something and that you recognize and you work with that. She talked maybe 2 pages ago about the Egyptian gods and how this, and you didn't understand it. I don't know Egyptian tradition. So when she talks about that, I said, okay, and I continue. It doesn't matter. I have a good friend, Martin Liederman. He knows and he loves the Egyptian tradition, and he gets things from the Egyptian part, but he doesn't like in general too much Hindu tradition, which I like. So I get things from there. You don't need to get everything that Blavatsky said. Go through the book and work with what produces something within you. So HPV said for that reason, start with the proem. Start with the basic teachings in the proem, and they give you a lot of food for thought. So because you need some understanding of the words, is that I wrote this book, and many other people wrote other books. I'm trying to explain the basic concepts so that that obstacle is removed to the extent that it can be removed. And you can go to the text with a general understanding of it. And then you can start doing your work. So I would say to use the secret doctrine as a form of yoga. You don't need to be knowledgeable in all these philosophies. Just work with the text, with whatever you understand, and you will see how fruitful it is. And then let it go, all the other things that you have no idea what she's talking about. Fine, there are many things I have no idea what she's talking about. I haven't studied all the traditions, and it doesn't really interest me. There is enough in the secret doctrine for all of us, whatever our background is. Yes. You have raised your hand?
On this subject, I have found a gift that even exists. And it goes something like this. All the questions and all the answers are in all the rooms all the time. So everything is available. It's up to us to seek it out. We ask ourselves the question through our exploration, share with others. Knowing that it's there is a gift.
Everything is available in a literal way. When Blavatsky explains our constitution, she says there are in us, in our aura, what she called the auric egg, there are centers of forces in our aura which are connected to intelligences and forces, cosmic intelligences and forces. And I was reading an article by an early theosophist, and she wrote with the pseudonym of Jasper Niemann. And she was saying, talking about this idea of the different centers, she was saying, potentially we have access to the universal mind. And if there is something that we don't perceive, it's because our vibration is an obstacle to that communication with the universal mind. She would say an adept is one that has attuned his or her whole nature with the cosmic mind, and therefore there is a constant access to it. So all the answers to any questions that you may have can be found inside. In fact, one of Blavatsky's teachers said, he who cannot find the answers in his soul has very few chances in occultism. You know, occultism was how Blavatsky normally, she was the first person to use this word in English. And for her, occultism was this path of this very deep path of inner development. Today, occultism is used in different ways. But this is what the master said. You need to learn to retrieve the information from your own soul. And the secret doctrine was written for that purpose. You know, think about it. She was sick, she was being attacked, she was being maintained alive by the master, and yet all this was so that she could finish this book. For what reason? To give a bunch of philosophy. The master says, it is not to give you another philosophy added to all those in the world that these teachings were given, but for their practical bearing on the interest of humanity. So this book was given so that we can start learning how to access the universal mind, which is the root of our personal mind. You know, it be said, manas, the mind, goes all the way to Mahat, to the universal mind. We can access it, but we need to exercise ourselves in that direction, like anything else in life that we want to, you know, develop. We need to exercise in that direction. That's the purpose of the secret doctrine. Anything else? Let's see the time we are doing. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. So we will have plenty of time to discuss all of this. Let us take a break. Take a break right now, and then we move on to Michelle's presentation. Thank you.